Let's get spooky. This is our Station Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
Welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted host with the most, we have got Lisa.
Hello, spectacular fans.
We've got Karen.
What's up, my horrorholics?
And I am Shannon. This episode, we are diving into the stories that birthed the fear that gave us horror, folklore and mythology. And we'll be talking about all the fun sorts of medias that they're in and that we love. Okay, so folklore, mythology, it covers a big spectrum. So fairy tales, urban legends, cryptids, all sorts of crazy tales and things like that. They're all part of that umbrella. So y'all, when you hear us talking about this, please note, we might be talking about horror specific things, but just remember, all these things, they're all part of the same umbrella. And just so everybody's kind of clear on what folklore is and what mythology is, folklore is traditional beliefs and customs and stories of a community that usually are passed through generations by word of mouth. Sometimes it's written, but oftentimes not. Mythology is a collection of myths, specifically being about a particular religion or cultural aspect. So just as a heads up, just kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about all this fun stuff. Ladies, what are your initial thoughts on folklore and mythology in horror? Lisa, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Actually, I think it's very important because it adds to the story, and you might learn something about a culture that you never knew before. And it also adds, sorry, can't talk today, adds an air of atmosphere and mystery to it to make you just kind of get involved in the storytelling. And, you never know what you might learn. Or if it's not correct, you will be engaged to go research and find out the truth behind the mythology or the folklore. So I think it's very important.
Okay. Karen, what are your thoughts?
Well, both are important in telling of different stories on how you want to skew the story. Yes, myths talk about gods and goddesses and has that religious undertones. And folklore, talks about the community with oral traditions of tales, rituals, and fables. In horror, it kind of brings it together to tell us how each of us as cultures and a community are the same, and yet how each of us are different. And if there is a difference between each of us, each community, it hopefully helps to inspire someone to go research more into that story, mythos, folklore, urban legend, or whatever they want to research into.
Yeah.
And thus tell their own story.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with both of y'all. I think what's interesting about folklore and mythology, they were always meant to be lessons. They were always this is why you need to do XYZ. This is why this is important. Like folklore and like fairy tales and things like that, this is why you listen to your parents and you don't disobey them. And like with mythologies, like especially with Greek mythology, it's like, well, this is why we have flowers. This is why we have winter. This is why you worship the gods the way that you worship the gods. And so I think it's interesting that with horror being a genre that is based on fundamentally rooting out our fears and bringing them into a comfortable, safe space, that you have so many lessons and origin stories that feed off of that fear. I mean, a lot of the original fairy tales were extremely dark and gruesome. I mean, The Little Mermaid, homegirl had to sew her legs back together. That was not a happy-go-lucky, happy ending fairy tale until Disney got their hands on it. So
I thought she died.
she did. She ended up becoming foam, but it was actually very painful for her. And when she got legs, it was like walking on glass.
Oh, I thought it was knives.
Knives, glass.
It was walking on something because she wasn't used to it.
Yeah, but it was extremely painful. And so, yeah. And she ended up not getting the guy. He ended up tossing her out anyways. So it was the worst Worst thing that could happen. I think it's interesting that, especially now that Disney is starting to lose their claim on a lot of these things, that we're getting some interesting horror takes on some of these older fairy tales. Yeah,
Yeah, like
they
the only
were they were the original horror stories.
yeah, the only mythos that I had a problem with that Disney came out with was Hercules.
That was so wrong on all levels.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely wrong on all levels.
Like his story was a horror story. You're like, dang. Like, come on, Disney. Tell the truth.
First and foremost, Hades wants nothing to do with the rest of everybody else. So he would not be going and trying to take over. By the way, if you guys don't know, I stan Hades. I don't see why everybody makes him out to be the bad guy. He is literally just doing his job.
He only had one wife, and he loved her. He wasn't like Zeus or the other gods.
And he was faithful.
Yes.
And he was faithful.
He was like, this is my wife. I love her. I don't know what's going on with you people.
Also, Perseus is the one who had Pegasus.
Yep.
Not Hercules.
Perseus had Pegasus. Hercules actually is the one who killed Megara and their kids.
Yep.
Because of Hera.
Again, horror story.
And Hera was not Hercules' mama.
No, it was not. But we could go on and on. So let's get back to the folk horror.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to get back on track. ADHD moment here. All right. So let's go ahead and have everybody just give like one example of folklore, mythology, horror media. So that way people kind of have like a reference when we start talking about like the influences and importance and all that kind of stuff. Who would like to go first with their prime example?
Well, there's a movie called Carved. It's a 2007 movie. It's based on the slit mouth woman.
Mm-hmm.
It is a legend, a folklore, and it also is an urban legend where a woman walks around with a mask on her face and she'll ask you, "Am I beautiful?" Sometimes she don't give you a chance to ask. She just like cuts you up. Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on like which lore you're looking at, sometimes she'll give you a chance to ask, and if you ask wrong, she'll give you the slit mouth like hers. But sometimes she won't give you a chance to ask, answer that question. There's like a lot.
Is that Korean or Japanese?
That's Japanese.
Japanese. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't remember which.
Yeah, there's a lot of Japanese folklore and urban legend that deals around with women. That now I'm thinking about.
Yes. And horror. Like,
yeah.
Now
that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I'm dealing with women and vengeance and stuff.
Really, if you guys think about it, think about most of the folklore and mythology out there. Most of it is centered around women.
Yeah.
There's certain mythologies that are male heavy, but for the most part, a lot of it is about women and women learning their lessons. I just made a face. Lisa, what is a prime example of mythology and folklore and horror media for you?
Okay, well, there's a couple of the folklore would be the Baba Yaga, and several movies about her. One is from, I believe, the 1970s, where it starts talking about Valessa, which is a fairy tale. Valessa the Great, or if I'm correct, I'm probably not correct, so don't quote me. But I know her name's Valessa. And then there's a couple of other horror movies about Baba Yaga in general. But yeah, basically she's a Slavic earth goddess in some things, or then she's the witch in the woods. And like the slit mouth woman, it depends how you treat her is how you're going to get dealt with. Some people say she's a cannibal. Some people say she's a goddess. I mean, it's very interesting and very intricate. I'm still reading a couple of books about it, but it's, I just like it because people are afraid of her. And for some good reasons. And then you're like, but if you treat someone kindly, you're, whatever. But I really like the whole house in the swamp or in the woods with the chicken legs. And she says this incantation, which is house face me, put your back to the woods, and it faces her so she can get in. And she doesn't ride a broom. She rides a mortar and pestle, which is representative of, back in the day, Slavic women had to use a mortar and pestle to, get their grains and everything prepared and everything. So, and then she can grind if you can grind, she can grind the bones in it or whatever. But it's really, really kind of a cool story. So, and it's been represented in more than one movie. Sorry, I digress.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm going to say probably a really good example of folklore / mythology in horror media would actually probably be The Wicker Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I prefer the Christopher Lee version, but Nick Cage didn't do half bad.
No, he didn't.
Okay.
He did not.
But The Wicker Man, I think, is a perfect prime example. It's a religious element to it, a pagan ritual that they have to do in order to bring prosperity to their island. But there's a lot of folklore to it. There's a lot of tale that kind of comes with it. Like there's a thing to it, and I think it's a really great example of how outside cultures don't understand that one.
Agreed.
And like the diversity that can come between it all.
I always thought, it would have been funny if, like, what if they sacrificed the wrong person? Like, what if this person was actually like the devil and they just kind of sacrificed the devil and he'd be like, listen, y'all fucked up.
I mean, honestly, that's why they have to be so careful, is because they know that they've sacrificed the wrong person, they won't get the blessing that comes with the ritual. So it's not like they're just going off willy-nilly.
I mean, yeah, they're not going off willy-nilly, but even though they're very careful, sometimes something slips in. You're like,
yeah.
What if? It's like, oh no, I accidentally sacrificed the daughter of Cthulhu.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Like,
would actually
no.
be pretty bad.
It's like,
Yeah, here comes the
no.
That island would be no more. Okay, so how would you guys say folklore and mythology influences horror tales? So for literature, TV shows, movies, the whole nine, like the whole gamut. Like, how do you guys feel like it influences?
It really, for me, it doesn't really influence. It just makes it have great stories to like fall back on, to pull from, because even for different cultures, because not a lot of people have heard of, in my culture, my mom's from Thailand, she's Asian, we have this thing called the karasu, which is a type of vampire that at night detaches her head from her body and floats around using her lungs. It's also a movie, if you want to check it out, called The Immortal Kiss on Netflix. And most of the time they know they're being possessed by this curacao. Sometimes they don't, the young girl doesn't know, but they're like, they're flying around and they, look for victims to feed off of. Mostly times it's a young mother who just gave birth.
Because there's already blood there?
Because there's already blood there.
Okay.
That makes sense, yeah. But sometimes if she's desperate, make do. But the very interesting thing about my mother's folklore when she was telling me this is that she uses her entrails and lungs to like fight you off if you ever attack her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when she told me that story, I had to go look for it. And I found out that other Asian cultures had that same type of vampire in their folklore. So for me, it is important and it does influence it, but at the same time, it doesn't. It's kind of like a tool that you could use to pull from, to use to tell your story.
It's kind of like a muse or an inspiration.
Yeah, kind of like a muse or an inspiration.
Okay.
But look up that story because it's amazing.
I just wrote down the movie, so.
Yeah, me too.
Because can you imagine the vampire like, ah?
The vision I had in my head was just, oh my God. Might have to be drawn later, guys.
Yes, definitely. Lisa, what about you?
I definitely would agree with Karen. I think it's something it's more like a muse. It does influence if the person who's doing it is actually studied a little bit of it and they get a little inspired from it. But it's definitely something to get stories from and make it your own, or just kind of make people aware of certain things, like our M. Night guy, M. Night Shaw,
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan.
thank-
Shyamalan.
Sorry, M. Night. But
We
he did that.
love you, I promise.
What a twist.
That story about where the apartment building and the storyteller, and he had to get that water nymph to back up, and then you had the grass creature, if I can talk, creature, and then you had the monkeys that beat it to death, and it was just kind of a whole cool mythology thing. And then I looked it up, and it was actually really cool when I looked it up. So yeah, that kind of stuff I think does help horror very well. And that's my thoughts on folklore and mythology.
Was it called
Horror.
Lady of the Water?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Lady in the Water. I think folklore and mythology do influence the way horror stories are told. I think with how a lot of them have gruesome, horrific, original stories, it's easy to build off of. And I think, especially when you see how urban legends change and how they grow and how they come to be and how it just instantly turns into a horror story. Like, it just becomes something so quickly and it envelops. And I think a lot of that is because we as human beings fear the unknown. We instinctually fear things we don't know and understand. And even though folklore and mythology, urban legends, all that stuff is supposed to kind of help us understand the things we don't know, we still don't know. Even when we hear these tales, there's still a piece of us who has more questions. And I think that's kind of like the cool part about fear and horror and all that kind of stuff. So I think there is influence, but I think it's an influence to produce more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I mean, because there's a lot of folklore and mythology out there that you could use to explore and not remake things.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Exactly. Now, with all that being said, how important do we think folklore and mythology is in horror?
I think it's really important because of the fact that you get to learn about different cultures and ideas. Like I never knew that, you shouldn't whistle at night until I heard the folklore about it. And I was like, oh, somebody needs to make a movie about that.
Oh yeah.
Some of these folklore that's been passed down from generation to generation need to be told so we can understand why we shouldn't do anything that we shouldn't do at night. Like the story about you shouldn't be playing in the woods at night because the fairies would get you. Why would the fairies get me? Because they want you. They want your flesh. They want to eat you. Okay.
Especially if you're a child.
And don't mess with the mushroom rings, please, people.
Oh yeah.
Come down.
It depends your definition of a mushroom ring, because there's like several different definitions of a mushroom ring.
If it's a mushroom, just don't touch it. Leave it be. Walk away.
Yep.
Like, so you have to get these stories to understand why it is we do the things we do. And even if you tell it in the horror aspect, for me, it drives it home really, really well once you put in a horror aspect. Because if you put it all cutesy wootsy, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. But if you drive it home in a horror aspect, you're like, oh, I don't want to die. I don't want to get maimed. I don't want to get kidnapped. I don't all X, Y, and Z happen to me. So it's important for, horror to use the folklore, to use the myths, to share amongst the communities, if you get what I'm saying.
Yep.
I did went a whole round way about this. I don't remember the question. I was just talking.
The importance of folklore and mythology in horror.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's important because you need to tell the story in a horrific way to drive the point home. We have fables about it. We have proverbs about it.
Yep.
But make it horrific. Horrific.
Absolutely.
Yep. Lisa?
I actually agree with Karen. Yes. There are some things that you don't want to do. Do play in the woods at night. You never know what you're going to run into. Don't whistle at night. And it gives you a good story. And if people would pay more attention and maybe make some more movies about folklore, you might actually learn something about other cultures, which is really cool. And then you might learn some more stories. And there are definitely warnings and tell you, hey, pay attention, just like Karen was saying. So I think it's very important. And I think I lost the question too, but there we go.
The importance of folklore and mythology in horror as the genre.
Okay.
And you also learn about your culture too.
Yeah,
your folklore. Also,
Yeah.
don't eat human flesh. There's a reason why you should eat human flesh.
Yeah. Scientifically, it will make you go insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain.
But for the folklore aspect of it, you'll turn into this monster, which is also scientifically you'll turn into a monster because you go crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lisa, did you have anything more you wanted to add?
Oh, no, we were
just riffing.
Yeah.
Like I said before, when it came to like the influence, I think it's vitally important. And I think as we as human beings continue to grow and change and become newer individuals ourselves, our stories change, our tales change, our folklore changes, our mythology changes. We have newer and more vibrant urban legends. And I think with all of that, horror just gets better because we have more stuff to build off of. And I think without folklore and mythology, I don't think we could have horror the way that we do. So many things are based off of it. It's like you said earlier about the Thailand vampires. Like that's a folklore to how it came to be. In Romania, the whole Dracula vampire type thing, that's Eastern Europe folklore. Even like Russia has its own stuff. Actually, Lisa brought this to our attention on Shudder. There's a documentary called Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched: A History of Folk Horror. And it actually goes through multiple different regions around the world and talks about different horror movies that are based off of folklore for that region. So like Australia, New Zealand have like specific movies that are based off of the folklore there that stem from some of the same different stuff that we've talked about before. So like zombies and vampires and werewolves
Oh my.
and like there's some places where vampires and werewolves are essentially the same creature. So it's kind of interesting to see where like the origin of a lot of this stuff comes from and where it ends up going. It is absolutely a learning point. And if you're somebody who doesn't just watch a movie to watch it, but you watch it to consume it, you will have questions and you will want to learn things. And so you will start digging and finding stuff. That's the cool part of being us, being humans, is that we can learn and we can see things from different perspectives. With that being said, let's kind of go into more of like the impact of folklore and mythology, horror type stuff on non-Western cultures and communities, and how like since we are Americans and since we are part of like the Western culture, how do we feel like it represents a lot of these other cultures and legends and things like that when it comes to the representation of their folklore in these movies? I know that was really convoluted.
No.
With American movies, I see them do a lot of remakes of good Asian movies, especially their folklore movies, like Shudder, The Grudge, and everything else. I mean, they
Ring
try
too,
to
right?
The Ring, Dark Water. They try to stay as faithful to the story as possible, but they try to turn it into like some sort of. They try to turn a Western eye to it, so you can see it in our perspective versus their perspective, and it makes it less. I have to say it. It makes it less horrific, really.
Yeah.
Because when you see the original, you're like, "Damn, that's good," and you see the remake, you're like, "What the hell just happened? Did you just take the heart and soul out of this movie?"
Yep.
Pretty much.
And when it comes to like horror of other regions, they tend not to use like the Western mythos or folklores because they have their own, and it's rich. So Western culture does not have really of an impact with with Asian culture, because I haven't seen an Asian folk horror that had like Western culture themes in it. I've seen a lot of their themes, like the ticket, which is folklore or urban legend where a girl gets cut in half, and if you hear the ticket, 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 it's her upper half trying to like avenge her death. She's coming after
Mm,
you, even though you didn't kill her. She's still trying to find the people who killed her. So they have an interesting Asian culture has an interesting, diverse folklore, and trying to westernize it for our perspective just cheapens it. It really
mhm.
does.
Yeah. I think I agree with you on that. I find that a lot of times especially when there is like a remake of another culture's story, we end up bastardizing it a bit and taking away from the original elements that make that story what it is.
I definitely would agree because, you know, if you want to learn about another culture, it's better to see it from their perspective, the mythology, than have it just made to make it where I'm making quote marks, people, where you think it would be easier for it to just simplify it so that it'd be easier to interpret to Western culture. Actually, Netflix now just got a whole bunch of Hindi horror movies on.
Mm.
And some of those are really, really wild. I've only seen one, and it was a couple months ago. But yeah, so you start learning about the culture and everything. So yeah, I don't like when we kind of take it like Karen said, like The Ring, and we remade it, and it was scary, but it wasn't. It didn't affect me like the original Shutter from Japan.
Mhm.
You
Thailand.
know, I love the original Shutter. That is just it creeps me out because I'm a photographer, so it's like, what am I going to take a picture of? But no, it's better. I would definitely say it's better to learn about the different cultures and watch their horror movies. I'm a big Spanish cultural horror movie buff because they got some of the best stuff on there sometimes. Like Satanic Panic is on Shutter right now, and it's got a lot of folk tales and
Yeah.
legends and stuff. And it's in my queue, so I haven't watched it, but just
Yeah,
kind of
I mean,
cool.
a lot of pagan rituals and religions and type things are part of it, even though it is kind of, I guess, a little more acceptable in Western horror versus like other regions. But yeah, I think there's two schools of thought when it comes to non-Western culture horror films, and specifically the ones that are based on mythology and folklore. And it's either it inspires you to dig more into that culture to understand the people, the reasons behind it all, to learn and to grow and to just dive in more, or it I think it leads to unnecessary fear
Yeah.
Yeah.
and not the good kind of fear. I know that there's been some horror films in the past that have been associated with some extremely horrible racial things that have happened to different communities here in the States. And those things just kind of built and, egged them on of, well, see, like, look, they do all this crazy stuff, like, it's horrible, it's, satanic, it's, whatever, versus no, it's just their mythology or their view of it. But I know personally I try to have like that open mind of, okay, let's learn about the culture. Let's learn about why did they have that folklore? There's always a reason for it. What's the reason? But I
I
agree with
mean,
both of you ladies.
I love the Shutter movie, and The Eye, because very rarely you see a lot of Thai movies come over to America. Um, and my mom enjoyed the original. When she saw the American version, she was just disgusted. She was like, she gave me a look of like, why are we watching this? This is not good. Shutter for me is basically, yeah, it stems in all our history because we all want to believe that our loved ones are around, and we want to see them around, like Lisa said, she's a photographer, so
Mm-hmm.
it scares her because of the thought of capturing a ghost. So that folklore of capturing ghosts, that is a good folklore that could translate well to any cultures. What
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have to do was take one story that's already been told and westernize it. They could have just
Yeah.
taken, like, we as a Western culture could have just taken that concept, make our own story out of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and have been great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
I agree.
So I know, like, okay, I in that documentary that I had mentioned earlier, they actually talked about um Midsummer with Florence Pugh. Personally, I think it was actually a really great movie. I know a lot of people didn't like it. They're like, "Oh, it's just a modern take on Wicker Man. It sucked." Blah, 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 blah. I thought it was fantastic. I thought visually it was great, whole nine. But I actually really loved the thoughts of this one person who said that even though yes, this is something that happens in a Swedish Northern Europe small village town type thing, it's an American story. And
Mm-hmm.
when I heard that, I was like, "Oh, okay, you're not wrong." But it
Yeah.
is, but it does present a different culture at the same time. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, okay, that's a kind of like a unique way to do it. And I know that there was a ton of people who, from watching that, did actually go, oh, do they actually have these kind of things in Sweden or in Northern Europe? Like, do they still practice this stuff? And so that I thought that was kind of neat that it sparked curiosity, even though now looking at it, I can see how it is American based.
Which is a good thing, because you want to see
Yeah,
it within, as a group of Americans going on vacation, you want to see it from, their perspective of what's going on.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Of
And what
course, it
I
makes you
think,
not want to travel again.
well, here's my thing. Out of all of them, Florence's character was the one who was most accepting to hear and learn what was going on. And
Right.
she was very much of like the, wait, so what are we doing? Okay, why are we doing it? Like she was trying to be respectful to the process. Well, if you
Right.
think about it, all the other people who were involved, who ended up dead,
Yeah.
bucked against it. They bunked against like how they ate or how they slept or what they did or how they did things.
Yeah.
Or they tried to do things their own way. And so
Exactly.
I think there was a little bit of a lesson in there.
Oh, correction. It's called Inhuman Kiss, not Immortal Kiss. Inhuman Kiss.
In Human
Oh,
Kiss.
okay.
Okay.
In
Yeah, the
Good, good,
Coruscant
good.
movie.
Let's go ahead and start throwing out all sorts of stuff. How many skulls we give it? Because we're going to start rating some things, but things that are based off of like mythology and folklore that would be really great ways for our audience, you, the listener, to kind of learn a little bit more and experience a little bit more going into it all. I will start it off with a book that I think is absolutely fantastic. I would actually give it 5 skulls. It is called Things We Lost in the Fire by Marina Enriquez. Fantastic book. Adela's house is probably the spookiest, and especially on the folklore mythology side of it all. I talk about a child who goes into an abandoned house and disappears, and the whole trying to figure it all out portion of that. But it's a collection of short stories, and it's fantastic. It actually does, a lot of these stories do stem in Hispanic culture. So you get to learn a little bit about Hispanic folklore and mythology that way. Who wants to go next? Any literature, anyways? Obviously, there's Grimm's fairy tales.
Oh,
Yes.
everybody loves fairy tales because, who doesn't? Who doesn't know about it?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
literature wise, you got Grimm. So
And
yeah.
Hans Christian Andersen.
Mm-hmm.
That's Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Hans Christian Andersen that has the Goose Girl in it. Or
I
is it
think so. I
uh,
think so.
that's like one of my favorite ones. Because how can you not like a decapitated talking horse head?
That's fair.
And
Unless you're in the Godfather, you know.
yeah, I think Hans Christian's might be a little more gory than the other ones, but I'm not real sure. I have to revisit those.
Well, Grimm, Grimm and Hans, both of them, they both were a lot darker,
Mhm.
but Grimm's got more tamed quicker
Yes.
because they ended up going spread farther than Hans originally. That is the
Right.
only reason why theirs
Yeah.
kind of don't seem as dark, is only
Yeah.
because they got cleaned up faster. But trust me, there was tons of
Yeah.
killing and maiming and dismembering
And cooking.
in their original stuff.
I would give those both 5 out of 5 skulls.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, who doesn't know of those two?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, look them up, man.
Yeah.
Look up the
Yeah.
original Cinderella story.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stepsisters like chopping their feet up so you fit into the shoes.
Mm.
Both of the books are free on Amazon for you to download on a Kindle, by the way.
Any literature pieces you want to add to the mix there, Karen?
I haven't read it yet. I've seen the movie, but I'm thinking it's going to be just as good as the movie, which is The Ritual. The Ritual, I give it a 4.5 skulls. Because I love the mythology that they were using.
Mm-hmm.
I hope, because I have the book in my to be read file. I have two files, two piles, one for horror and one for everyday pleasure. So it's in there. I have like over 15 books in horror and over 30 in the pleasure one. And let's not count the Kindle. Okay.
I was gonna say I've lost count on all of my to be read lists. I feel like they're just ever growing, and so I'll get to them when I get to them.
Yeah.
It's like, look at this.
Okay. Let's go ahead and dive into some movies then.
And I would say Ravenous, because that was like one of the movies that I really enjoyed in the movie theater when my brother took me to see it. He took me to see some real strange movies, but I really enjoyed that movie about, the Wendigo and, the consequences
Antlers?
of eating human flesh.
Antlers?
I haven't seen Antlers yet.
Oh, you have to see it. It's great.
Oh, that's a good one. And
Okay,
talks
I'm gonna
about
put that on my
Wendigo.
list.
That's why I thought that's the one you were talking about.
No, Ravenous, where
Oh,
a
okay.
group.
I thought you were moved on to another movie.
I don't know.
My bad.
But is that what it's about? The Antlers about Wendigos too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, all right, I'll write that one down.
And don't worry, y'all. We'll probably do an episode on it. A lot of times when you guys hear us talk about like a movie or a book or even a TV show, it is literally on our list of media to review and do an episode on. So at some point in time, we will probably do an episode, just as a heads up.
But yeah, Ravenous, I give that like, a 4.5 skull.
Okay.
Cool. Cool.
You want to give us another one?
Pumpkinhead. Love Pumpkinhead. Not only is it's like, based off of a Virginian folklore, the Appalachian folklore, but it's also based off of a poem about Pumpkinhead. And I love Pumpkinhead to this day. It's such an unrated movie, underrated. So I give that a 5. That scared the shit out of me as a kid. Like, I want to give up my soul for who? Yeah, I understand he killed the kid, but now you're also dying too.
Lisa, what about you?
Okay, I will say one of my first urban legend movies has to be The Legend of Boggy Creek, based on the legend of a Bigfoot-like creature in Arkansas that there have been sightings since the 1950s. It's a 1972 movie, and it's really good. I give it about a 4.5 out of 5 skulls.
Okay. How about another one?
Yeah. There's one called Baba Yaga, and it's not real. It's kind of sort of based on the legend, but it's kind of not. So I'd give it about a 3 skulls. But it's a 2013 or 2015, can't remember. But I know that the cover is this girl wrapped all in red thread because the red thread is part of the red thread is part of the legend's original folklore, and she's holding a baby. But I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Okay. I'm gonna say Pan's Labyrinth.
I give that a 5.
That one's absolutely a 5. Absolutely a 5 skull. Simply just for the special effects and the prosthetics and the makeup, and yeah, we're all putting our hands up over our eyes for that one creature. But even the fawn the fawn alone was magnificent. And I think not just like all of that, but the story itself was actually really good and really intriguing. It was something that you're like, yeah, I want to know how this ends. Like what happens? So I think overall it's just extremely well done, and it does have that folklore mythology element to it. So it's absolutely fantastic. And this one is going to be a little bit more family friendly of a film, but I'm going to say Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci. Actually, like that was a really great cast for that film. I probably will give it a five skull, simply because it is kind of on the nostalgic side, and it's something that's easy to watch over and over and over again. And even though it's not like super duper horror, it's family friendly. It's something that the whole family can sit down and watch. But I like that, and I like how it brings in the colonial folklore and mythology. I think it's fantastic, and it's based off a book, so makes it even more fun. So you got two forms of media of it that you can read and learn from.
Yep.
So
Pet Cemetery has two forms, like the original 1983 film, and then the book.
Yep. I would give that one a 4 out of 5. Maybe a 4.5 out of 5.
How about the movie Babadook?
I like that one. I usually have that on my horror movie marathon in October and September.
I give that a 4, actually a 3.5. I love the movie. It's that little kid that was screaming in the backseat. If that wasn't there, I would have gave it like a 5. But that little kid, I
don't like children, so yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
100%
agree.
Oh God, no.
I would like to see more influence of the Babadook into it instead of the psychology.
Yeah. Okay. So for TV shows, I'm going to start with Supernatural and toss that out there. I actually kind of like a lot of their takes on some of the original like mythologies and folklore. There are twists. They're not 100% accurate, but for a lot of them, they've got like the basics down. And I think they did a good job kind of like giving nods and being respectful towards a lot of them. So I would give them, like, on a folklore mythology portion, I would give them like a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
But I do really like the show, even the later seasons that I know a lot of people don't like. By the way, listeners, Karen's making a disgusted face.
I give it a 4.5
at this moment.
I mean, I only do like the first like 5 seasons, and after that, I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. But I agree with you. I agree with you.
Even my sister-in-law, who loves, she loves Supernatural, and then when it started getting into like the angel and demon portion, she was like, "No, it's not for me." Not for.
See, I don't mind the angel demon portion. So, what are some shows that you guys would recommend?
X-Files, like we brought up earlier, they have some of the, when there's not aliens and stuff, they do have some mythology stuff in there, like the guy who hibernated and would eat whatever, hiding under the escalator. And there was a couple other things that were in there. So I would give X-Files, like, until the later seasons, I'd say I'd give them a 3.5. Later seasons got really kind of dull and boring.
Okay.
I would give it a solid 4.
Yeah.
But I will also say this. I think the episodes that were heavier on the folklore and mythology, I think were their darker episodes. And I think they were their more horror-based episodes, versus their normal, like, chasing aliens, Roswell BS.
That was Mulder's thing, because Mulder was like all up on that.
Which I kind of liked, how, like, when it came to aliens and that stuff, he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm all here for it. But as soon as it's like Bigfoot, he's like, nah,
Nope, like, no,
that's not happening. And we're just like, but why? Why are you the doubter?
Yeah.
Versus Scully, who's like, no, I believe it.
Like, I believe this, and before I believe aliens.
It's just like,
wow. Exactly.
Whatever. You believe what you want to believe. Okay. What else?
Actually, I would have to say, for a newer mini series of a television show on Netflix, have to be Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a twist that one mythology. And then I
Mhm.
looked up a little bit of it on where he found the thing.
Mhm.
And there's actually some mythology about that in Jerusalem and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised, and it was good. It was a good folklore mythological, if I can talk, type of story. It was really good.
Okay. Karen, what about you? What are a couple of TV shows?
There's one called Folklore off of Cinemax, HBO Max, that
Mhm.
deals with an anthology of superstitions and folklore.
Mhm.
It's from the regions of Asia, so y'all need to check that out. It's pretty good. I give that like a 4.5. What else? The difference. Are You Afraid of the Dark? That had
Yeah.
really good folk horror in it and mythology. To this day, I still get scared of listening to the stories. I'm sorry, I'm like 40 years old, but that some of those stories just brings a chill to like my spine. So that would be for 5 for me.
Yeah.
Um,
And then you have like Tales from the Crypt, Goosebumps. They're all kind of along the same lines.
and that show Lake Erie,
Mhm.
something Erie.
Erie and Diana.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
that also. Yeah, that was in the same line with the
Yeah.
Mhm.
love those shows.
And obviously you've got like newer stuff like American Horror Story. Like they did that whole Roanoke um
Mhm.
like legend type thing. You have Stranger Things, which is based off of D&D, which is based off of folklore and mythology. You've got Charmed, which that deals with all of that. Um but I'm gonna again kind of go into the more like kid-friendly portion because I think it's some good fun stuff to start off with. But you got Scooby-Doo. You have
Scooby
the
Doo.
classic Scooby-Doo.
Rosha.
How many times it's a piece of folklore, some urban legend, some local tale about why something's haunted, and it just turns out to be the guy who owns the gas station, you know?
The guy who owns like the golf course who wants to close it down and turn it
Mhm.
into a mini mall.
Yeah. Um, you have
And it'd be
gargoyles. So for
yeah,
us millennials or Zennials or even Gen X, who remembers that TV show?
I do.
I loved that show. To be
Me too.
perfectly honest, I had a crush on the main guy.
Goliath.
Well,
Yeah,
Keith Davids did that voice. I
I
love me
don't
some
have a
Keith David.
crush on him.
well, I thought Jonathan Frakes did the voice.
No, Keith David did the voice if I remember correctly. Hold on.
I was gonna say, I got my IMDb pull up. We can Google it.
Yeah. He was the Flame King in Adventure Time. Goliath from the Gargoyles. I forgot Tim Curry was in it.
Yep.
Yeah. But last
Memories.
but not least, on my kids' TV horror that has folklore and mythology in it is my favorite little nugget, Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Doesn't love
100.
Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I
I
love
love me some
Courage.
If
Courage.
anybody says a bad word about Courage, instantly blocked. I will not accept any Courage slander.
None whatsoever.
None. I will protect that little dog. He deserves it. He's been through too much.
Yes,
Poor
he
thing.
has. He's
Yes,
been
he
That
has.
protecting Miriam since she got him.
that poor little dude.
The poor little
But
pink.
I would give a lot of those 5 stars or 5 skulls. Um, Anything else that you guys wanna mention?
Um, no, no. But are we gonna do an urban legend one? Because I would love to do nothing but urban legend.
Me too.
Of course, I would love to do it. I also want us to do an episode where we talk nothing but cryptids. And I have a friend who her username is cryptid. So I'm obviously going to invite her to come on to that episode and talk about cryptids. She's in love with Mothman. So,
As long as she doesn't put the quarter.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, she knows how to do it right. She knows how to do
Awesome.
it right. Ooh, Banshee, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
Irish mythology.
Oh yeah.
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 I like that one.
Yep.
You do have The Conjuring, which is based off of demon lore, specifically Bathsheba.
Yep.
And then, of course, we can't forget Christmas, 6 months away, or however many months away it's going to be. I don't even know.
6 months and 6.5 months.
We have Krampus for German lore.
Yes. And
I love me some Krampus.
his official day is December 5th.
Mm-hmm.
For the Krampus.
Yes.
Yup. Okay. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Without folklore and myths, we wouldn't really have a culture or a foundation to build off of.
Facts.
Also, I would love to see how folklore and myths and urban legends, progress and evolve for the next 10, 20, 30 years. As long as I'm alive, I want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be stagnant. I want to see you evolve.
Yeah. Lisa?
Yes, I agree with Karen. We definitely need to keep our folklore and everything. And it does accentuate horror, whether it be literature or told to each other like we used to do around the campfire. I think it's definitely important. And I do kind of like to see how it does evolve with us becoming more modern, like Slender Man, how that evolved. It started as a Photoshop contest, and now we got these little girls killing each other. That's so kind of special because Slender Man told them to do it. So, but yeah, but it's still creepy. It's still creepy.
Yeah, I think folklore, mythology, and horror, it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a really great way for us to continue with our oral storytelling. Um, I would love to see more cultures being open to allowing there to be media based off of their folklore. I respect the fact that that some cultures do not want that. But I would love to be able to learn more about them through storytelling and through seeing these things like that. And I just overall, I hope that people take these opportunities to learn about the original stories and how they've learned and grow, or how they've grown um, to become what they are today. So, you, the listener, which mythology and or folklore or urban legend, oh my, do you think makes for the best horror movies? What are some of your favorite horror movies that are based off of folklore and mythology? Tell us on our social media. You can find us on all the different things, and we can continue this conversation. But we are on Instagram, we are on TikTok, we are on X, Threads, and please join our Facebook group. We got some great stuff going on in there. You can also subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts, such as Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube. We'd also like for you guys to follow us individually. You guys can find us on a ton of different stuff. But Lisa, where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, not X anymore, Threads, and sometimes YouTube.
All right. Karen, where can they find you?
Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, TikTok, Reddit. Not on YouTube. I have a YouTube account, but I don't have any videos up.
And you can find me on all the things at Spill Tea Wine Media Mind. Thank you guys so much. Honestly, you, the listener, it touches us that you guys are staying and around and listening to us. We really do appreciate it and your support. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But most of all, stay spooky, our lovely ghouls.
Later.
Toodles.